Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Andrea Saez, Senior Product Marketing Manager here at airfocus, and with me today are the two Adams and Elisa. We're going to be talking about product management stuff, topics, trends, all those fun things. We do have a couple of questions that we're going to start out with, but if in the process of this webinar you have any questions, you can click on the little questions button at the bottom left. Drop in your questions and we'll be asking that to our speakers today. Before we get started, yes, we are recording this, so if you need to drop out, don't worry about it. You can always watch it back. And if you enjoy this, be sure to share it out and, spread the word. With that, hello, everybody. How are you guys doing?
Hey, good. Happy to be here.
Do you all want to introduce yourselves? Let's start with you, Lisa. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm Lisa. I'm from Hamburg, Germany, and I work as a product coach. I have worked in product management before, but now I'm trying to help other people be product managers.
What about you, Adam T?
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Thomas. I am the lead product manager at Smart Recruiters, and I just want product managers to make better decisions.
Don't we all? What about you, Adam, the other Adam, Adam H?
Hello, I'm Adam Hecht. I'm a senior product manager at Bombas. I work primarily on e-commerce platform there. I've been in product for just about 10 years across B2B and B2C. And yeah, like Adam T, want other product folks to make better decisions and fall more deeply in love with solving problems.
Amazing. So as I said, we do have a few questions that we're going to start out with. The first one is, what would you say are the main changes you have seen in product management over the last 12 to 18 months? Adam T, why don't we start with you?
Ooh, I like starting. So I think the positive change that I've seen in product management is more of a thought around biases and cognitive traps. I think as product people, this is something that can particularly strike us since we're taking in a lot of information from different sources. And part of the job is to be able to decipher and spit out these things in a way that makes everyone understand. And so thinking about the cognitive traps that we can fall in, and really trying to avoid them has been something that has been extremely positive. A negative trend is the professionalization of product management. When I got into this about 15 years ago, it was a lot more pirate shippy. Product managers were more cast-offs of different parts of tech that figured out, hey, this weird thing that I'm in, somebody brought you in and probably could do this. And you kind of learned how to do product management in more of an apprenticeship style. And I think that still works well for product managers. The problem is there's been a lot of professionalization over the last 12 to 18 months. Schools, to universities, to online programs, to articles and columnists and talks, and just everyone trying to say this is what product management is. But if you do this long enough, you understand that it's a very contextual work. And so people have these rigid ideas about product where product in itself is very flexible. And so I think that's causing a lot of schisms in what the sweet science is.
Fun question. How many of us are accidental product managers? There we go. So none of us studied to do this, which is super fun. But I love what you just said, pirate shippy. Yes, I think lots of accidental product managers in here as well. Lisa, do you want to chime in on the question?
Yeah, sure. So something that I kind of saw a lot more of was a shift towards discovery work, especially if I think about like 12 to 18 months, and then in Europe we're always a little bit behind whatever's happening in the US. So I think that was definitely something, and with Teresa Torres's book and everything, it kind of became like more prominent, and a lot more people talk about it. I hope it's not only talk but also do, but overall I think that's a very positive trend that I've been seeing, that I like a lot. And maybe not necessarily a negative trend, but something that I've noticed is that there's a lot more talk about imposter phenomenon, especially within the product community, which I find very interesting. And I mean, like, doubting yourself a little bit is okay because it'll keep you on your feet. But I think something that might be happening here is, and we've already talked about this a little bit behind the scenes, is that we know a little bit about a lot of things, and we're surrounded by experts, right? So we have all these people around us who are really experts in their field, and we have to work with everyone. And so we sometimes just sit in the middle and think, well, I'm a little bit stupid maybe because everybody knows so much more than me. Like, how did that happen? And I'll probably find out soon that I don't know anything, which at the end of the day is actually not true. I think it's good to remind ourselves sometimes that we're the experts on collaboration and alignment, and that's a really important thing. So
I like that. Once someone told me that product managers are not there to solve the problems, but to help source the people that can solve the problems. So like you said, collaboration and alignment. Adam, the other Adam, I don't know what to call you. Adam too. What about your thoughts on the main changes that you've seen in product management?
Yeah, so I think I am going to use this opportunity to just build off of what my colleagues have said here, right? I think I agree that professionalization of the discipline can kind of create this rigidness in the way some PMs start to think, right? There's this plethora of frameworks now for folks to choose from, and yet I still consistently see folks get bogged down in one, right? Rice is the one. This is the way we're going to go, right? There's no flexibility there. Oh, wait, what do you mean you still do agile? Oh, we don't do agile. We do, this new thing, right, that we just read about. So I think that professionalization is fine, and getting into the academics of product management is okay, provided that you always maintain that sense of curiosity around, hey, is this really the best approach to this particular problem, right? And I talk a lot about, my past as a musician, and we used to joke around about the musicians who learned a ton of theory because they started boxing themselves into things, right? You have to know, if you're going to learn the rules, right, learn enough about the rules to break them in a way that makes sense. And I feel the same way about product and frameworks, right? It's about learn as much as you can, but don't get stuck in one particular framework. I think that's a mistake that a lot of folks make. And, to Lisa's point as well, right? The shift towards identifying and combating imposter syndrome amongst PMs, and the focus more and more on mental health and work-life balance for PMs is really important. Again, behind the scenes, right, you were talking about how stressful it can be sometimes as a PM. So that recognition, it's early in the US, I'm still tired.
Recognition.
Of the idea that PMs still need to take a step back, and that, we don't have to be on 100% of the time, and fight and combat imposter syndrome and our own mental burnout is really important, and more folks are embracing that.
This is actually a really great bridge to our next question, which is, to what extent do you think the role of product manager is valued or understood by the business? And Lisa's already like, and do you feel this has changed? So I almost just want to start with you, Lisa, because you clearly have things you want to say.
Yeah. I have to say, at least here in Germany, and maybe also more general in Europe, I can't kind of help but feel that it is still not fully understood. A lot of the time people are hired as POs, like that'll be your job title, PO. And people actually think it only entails what a PO and a Scrum team does, which is not, it's only one small part of a product manager. So and often you hear these things where it's just like, oh yeah, like you make sure things are delivered on time, and you're already like, it's a project manager. So I think it's not fully understood a lot of the time, but you can see how it gets valued more and more. So I've worked in Berlin, like I've been there in the startup scene, so there people have definitely a better understanding of it. But then when you go to like, kind of old school big corporations, they're still pretty new to the whole idea, and also they might see things like safe and think like, oh, they have a PO in there, let's do
I
that.
feel like
That's
Adam
awesome.
just went into shock right now when you said
Yeah, I
safe.
know.
He
I'm
just
sorry.
went-
I'm sorry, Adam. I didn't mean to say the bad word, but so I feel like a lot of the time, it's not really well understood, and that's why it's also not valued. Because if you don't really understand the role, like you don't even know all the awesome stuff that can happen if you have really good product management.
Adam H, what about you?
So I think it depends on the business, right? I think that.
I just want to interject and say I love that you said it depends.
I mean, isn't that all of our catchphrases? Like that's the kind of like PM. That's what we say, right? But it does. It depends on the business, right? And it doesn't even necessarily depend on the stage, right? A Series A or a seed stage startup versus a large, sprawling global conglomerate. The startups can do product very, very wrong, while the big legacy business can do product very, very right. I think it all comes down to who the leadership is, right? And a clarity. This is going to sound a little bit convoluted, but the clarity of vision in the role that you're hiring for, right? If you're hiring for a project manager, be specific. Know that that's what it is. The scope of this role is to take projects from start to finish. If you're hiring a product manager and you don't want to give them the leeway to produce a vision, produce a strategy, and execute and build on outcomes, really think about why you're hiring that role then, right? And the more that senior leadership gets into what a product manager is, I think the more you'll see many businesses do the right thing with product. And it helps too that a lot of us are kind of coming up now and being leaders in our own right. Former PMs that make a transition into GM roles and executive roles that are even outside of product, COOs, even CEOs in a lot of cases. I think you'll start to see it spread a little bit more, but as of right now, it still very much depends on who the leadership is, why they're hiring the role they're hiring for, and being very clear about what they want.
Mr. Thomas, you're a hiring expert. Are you not? What thoughts do you have about this? I don't know if Adam's connection has gone a little bit. We'll give him a minute. Is it just me?
No, I can't
No.
hear him either.
I think he's back. Are you? Mr. Thomas? Your microphone has gone. I think we've lost Adam for a minute. Oh no. All right. Adam, your microphone seems to be out for some reason. Technical issues, nobody can escape them. So we'll try to. What happens when you put a bunch of product managers in the room? Tech's always going to go out. That's all right. Well, I think Adam's going to try and come back and rejoin. So we'll try to move forward a little bit in the meantime. Sorry, everyone, by the way. Things happen. And he had such a fancy mic too, didn't he? Anyway, so the airfocus team did a little bit of research and found out that 40% of product managers believe he is back.
Hello.
Believe he is back. He is back. I don't even have to go to the next question. We're going to try to piggyback from the previous question. Let's roll back.
All right.
Time loop. Mr. Thomas, what do you think about hiring?
So I think I just want to piggyback on what I've heard here. No one understands what product managers do. Sometimes even product managers. And I think as I've gone into product leadership, the thing that I've realized my number one job or close to it is to be a flag for product, right? I have to constantly explain what we do, how we do it, what does good look like, and also what does bad look like, right? Which is, for various reasons tends to be where new product leadership comes in, because there probably was bad prior, right? And so before we even think about hiring, I think it's important that a product person spends some time understanding the place that they're in, the context, and then going about creating what good looks like in people's brains, right? Also, I think it's extremely important to take over the hiring process, right? You can't trust anybody else, right? They hired you. They made a huge mistake. No, but no, like in order for people to appreciate that, like you have to do the work to bring in good PMs that have to, and it has to be tied to the culture of which you're bringing them in. And they have to understand what problems they're solving, right? And so none of that can happen without a good baseline or definition of what product is, and nor can you expect them to enjoy or appreciate it, because they don't know what they're appreciating. It's one thing that I tell folks around product is that people tend to not understand, right? It's not their fault. Product managers don't have a discrete output. You cannot point to a product manager and say, there's that code that they wrote, or there's that screen that they designed, or there's that sale they made, right? And because of that, folks aren't going to naturally just appreciate the work, right? But we all know the power. I think as Lisa mentioned it, right? We all know the power of a really great PM and what they can bring to the business. So it's part of our job to really push that into the companies that we're in.
I love that. Thanks, Adam. Does anyone have anything else to chime in? No? Excellent. So I was starting on the next question, but I'll start again. So the airfocus team did a little bit of research and found that 40% of product managers believe the adoption of product-led growth models is the industry's greatest challenge. Does that reflect your experience as well? Or do you find that there's other things that are perhaps more challenging, just as challenging, emerging challenges? Adam Thomas, let's start with you this time. If your microphone is working.
Let's see. Is it working? All right, we're still good. All right, so awesome. I think I started smiling about product-led growth because it's the latest buzzword that CEOs have started to
I was
find.
just going to say, as I was reading that, I was like, that is such a terrible buzzword. And I'm the one hosting.
It's like that's what that, once executives get their teeth on some sort of buzzword, then it's always going to be the greatest problem that product managers have to deal with. Like that's a reality. What was it before? Spotify squads, right? Remember that was a buzzword. It's always going to be something. I think the core of product-led growth is great for consumer B2C companies, right? Because it's the idea of creating emissaries of your product, right? Your product leads folks into referring others, right? The trick of it is it moves people.
We have lost your microphone again, sir. Oh, it was such a great answer. There we go. I think you're back.
Okay. Are we back?
Excellent.
Hello?
You're back.
All right, good. And so the trick of product-led growth is leading folks from activation to referral rather quickly, right? Using your product. In the B2B space, and here's where the problem is, your user is not your customer, right? And so it can lead to some weird thing. If you're over-indexing on creating these emissaries in your company, while that's a good thing, people are going to get very frustrated because it doesn't change how the customer feels. And so I think what we see here in one of these trends is product-led growth becomes the thing that, our dear executive staff clings onto is this idea of that they see it happen and work with companies like Slack. And then in our B2B context, they go, oh, why doesn't it work for us? Well, the business model is different. And so for us as product people, and I think this is where we partner with our wonderful product marketing folks, right? Like we have to sell that message and work with our product to leverage its strengths, both for the customer.
I think we've lost Adam again. I guess we'll have to hopefully wait till he's able to come back.
I do want
Adam
to
H.
pick up the thread though on what he was saying, because
Yeah,
someone who's
go
kind
for
of like I think I've successfully transitioned out of the B2B world into B2C, but I still retain lots of experience there, and there's this delicate balance of product in a B2B world being voice of the customer versus voice of the user, right? And being able to find that balance is really critical. Thinking that a B2B enterprise software company, for example, right, if that's the kind of lens we're looking at product management through, and we are trying to build things specifically for users, as Adam said, right, you walk into that trap of product-led growth getting the blame for simply not working, right? But product managers tend to loathe the idea of sales-led growth. But at the end of the day, right, sales is extremely close to the customers. We are extremely close to the users. And I think in a B2B context, it does behoove product to go out in the field with sales, if they're not already, go into the field with customer success and actually talk to the users and the potential customers and prospects. I found that to be pretty successful for me when I was in that context. Moving over to the B2C side, right? Yes, product-led growth is almost the de facto method. And we, where I am today, like I see almost no challenges with it there. For me, it's more like, our product at Bombas is socks primarily and other types of apparel. These are real physical products. Meanwhile, I focus on the software side of things, making sure that people can purchase these things. So it's a bit of a different beast on the B2C side, but ultimately it still always boils down to the product.
What about you, Lisa? What are your thoughts on product growth models?
Yeah, I think like one thing I don't like about it is this whole thing where what that Adam already mentioned a little bit, that it's kind of like, oh, it's product led or sales led or marketing led.
I was going to say the same thing.
Like it sounds like, oh man, like we're gonna win over those marketing and sales people, but it's like we all need to work together because like that's the only way it works. What I think might have been one of the intentions when this kind of word came up, or the expression to say like, oh, it's product led growth, is maybe this idea that you can still often see in companies that didn't start out as like tech companies, where the idea is that every company is a tech company now, and that means every company needs product management, and putting product at the front together with sales and marketing makes sense to build good products that people like to use, even in a B2B space. I know there it's a little bit like, well, they have to use it sometimes and those kinds of things, but overall, my understanding would be to just kind of make sure that product or tech is not kind of like an internal agency or like a service provider for sales and marketing. But ultimately, I feel like everybody needs to work together, and I'm seeing a shift more into that direction, which I personally really like.
I'm glad you said that, because I've always thought that a lot of it also depends on the context of the customer's journey, right? Sometimes sales-led growth is the right approach. Sometimes support-led growth is the right approach, just like sometimes product-led growth is the right approach. But yeah, it's really all about, ensuring that Adam Thomas is back and that all teams are working together, because that's what we want, is working together through the collaboration that product management is able to give everybody, and focusing on outcomes and making sure we're not just doing things to do things, but that all of our strategies are tied in together. Our next question is one that we all really liked backstage. So I'm going to ask all of you to answer at the same time. What would you say to someone that is interested in a career in product management?
Don't.
No.
Don't.
Don't do it.
Can we try that again? No.
No. Why would you want the headache? You see how my technical issues are happening? This is literally how your day is every day. It's just a bunch of issues coming your way over and over and over again and over again and over again.
And over again.
And over again. He's still
And then
here,
a
so
few
that's
more
good.
times.
It's, you know, again, this goes back to the very first conversation we had, I think, about professionalization of product management. And we get this idea that product is this sexiest role of roles, right? There's the elevation of, you know, classic PM archetypes that, you know, Steve Jobs, right, is one of the first that come to mind. Folks read Marty Kagan and they think, oh man, what a great role it must be to have a designer and 3 engineers, and that's my team, and we build all of the coolest things ever. When no, that's not even close to what it's like in a day-to-day. And if you can cut through that and embrace the chaos and embrace the ever-changing nature of what it is that you're doing, you'll succeed, right? But again, like if you get bogged down in buzzwords, you get bogged down thinking about, okay, well, I'm a data-driven PM, or I want to be a data-driven PM, so I can't possibly make any decisions until I have all of the data. You know, that's
All of the inputs for your rights framework.
exactly all the well, no, I can't make a bet because I need to be certain, right? It's just, it is not the role, I think, for you. And as long as you can get a 360 view of what the field is, and I think that involves, honestly, talking to lots of PMs, right? New PMs, veteran PMs, the PM community on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Reddit, it's just never been better, right? And I wish I had these kinds of resources like airfocus, right, when I was starting out in product, but I didn't. So kind of had to learn by doing. Right now, it's really easy, I think, to connect with veterans and newbies alike and kind of confirm or invalidate your suspicions for what the role is and get a better sense of it. And that's honestly my advice is, first, it's no. Second, it is go out, talk to PMs, make sure this is really something you want to get into and understand the full scope of the role before committing.
Would anyone want to do anything other than PM, given that everyone said no?
No.
Never.
No.
Lisa, why not?
Well, for me personally, I just like, it's the best job in the world. I love doing it. It's definitely not easy. It's very, very complex. It requires excellent communication skills, and I don't always have those. But I think something that people forget is that it also requires zero ego. And I kind of want to circle back to it. I think Adam H. said it, that it's like sexy. I don't even think it's like the professionalization of it. It's almost like an Instagramification. I'm making up words now.
That's great. I love that.
Like, you know, it sounds like this glamorous and sexy job, but actually, you know, the idea is if everything goes well, you give credit to the team. And then, you know, if shit hits the fan, you take responsibility and you make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I think this whole idea and this feeling of, oh, I'm going to be a PM, I'm going to have all the ideas and like people will do what I say because I'm a manager of some sorts. Like, no, no, you're not. But at the same time, you get to work with some of the smartest people out there. Like, I think that's also something that I personally love about it. And I think every PM should be naturally curious. I love learning new things, and I'll just be sitting in some tech meeting because I'm like, hey, can I come? And they're like, yeah, but you know, you can't make those decisions. I'm like, I know, but I just want to listen and learn about these things because it's kind of cool what you're doing there. And that's something I've learned so much just from working with developers about all the tech stuff, because like I have zero technical background, but now I know a lot of technical things. So if that's something you're interested in, then that's actually the best job in the world.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think it's funny because like there are a lot of people coming into product managers who would have came in and been consultants like 10 years ago. Right. There's it's a weird level of prestige that has been attached it's funny, Adam, you mentioned the Steve Jobs and the Macintosh team, right? What people tend to miss is, well, with the Macintosh team, Steve was the CEO and signed the check, so he could create whatever environment he wanted to craft what he wanted to craft. His name was on the building, right? For PMs, that's not the truth. In fact, I think I'm a fan of Marty Kagan and his work, but one of the biggest sins that he's committed was telling people that the PM is the CEO of the product, right? Which is nowhere near the truth, right? And so when folks come out of the HBSs or the LSEs or the Oxfords and they say they want to be a product manager, they're thinking of Steve Jobs. And as Lisa said, there's nothing worse than the idea PM. Like, there's really nothing worse than the idea. Just like, I got all the ideas. They come to me for ideas. I dream them up and they make them. Like, that's not how any of this works. And as a result, a lot of folks, I think, due to this professionalization and then this glamorization, a lot of folks are going to burn out a PM in the next few years. But those that stay, will find a fulfilling job, right? If they're wired for it. As Lisa said, there's no ego. Curiosity really is your driver. And as long as you follow that curiosity, you tend to be all right, right? If you follow that curiosity with no ego, you'll be just fine.
I'm not even the CEO of my own calendar at this point.
Yeah,
I was going to say two things. The first is I answered a very similar question in a webinar recently where somebody asked, oh, well, but what about Steve Jobs? And I had to answer, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're not Steve Jobs, and none of us are. I'm not Steve Jobs. You're not Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was in a very unique position where he could make those decisions because he had an entire team and, it was his company. So unless it's your company, then at that point, you're the CEO. You're not the product manager. And yes, I agree with you about this term CEO of the product, because I feel like it's caused some confusion about what PMs do. But there's a question that popped up, and I feel like we kind of half answered it, which is, do you think that before going into the PM area, you should have prior experience in other areas? Or should someone that's a little bit more junior just say, okay, yes, I want to become a PM? Like, what level of experience do you think someone should have before they make that decision of, let's do this thing that nobody seems to like and yet everybody seems to love at the same time?
I would go with it depends again. Because I got to. If you have the chance to go into a company that has an APM and associate product manager thing set up, I think it can be a cool start to your career journey right out of uni or whatever. Going into an organization that has little to no product management and like being thrown into the deep end straight away will not be fun at all. So you make sure you have a company where they take time for coaching and training, and holding your hand for a little bit when you first start out. No matter what your prior experience is, actually, it would always be good, but especially if you have no other work experience, because I feel like product management does not leave a lot of time for general work experience things to be learned. I can't really explain it, but I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, I speaking for just my own personal experience, right? I had some professional experience prior to getting into product, right? And before the very first, product that I was involved in, I didn't even know I was doing product management, right? I was in media sales at the time, and I was helping rebuild the tool that we used as attached to Salesforce to handle our leads that came in. And a couple of the engineers encouraged me to go look at product, and I was like, well, what the hell is product management, right? So having that experience, I think was crucial. And then, as Lisa said, getting into an organization that had a semi-mature product management role, I kind of came into it having mentors built and laid out in front of me. So I think that was more the key than my original professional experience, was the mentorship at getting into a role and getting into a company that viewed product as a valuable thing and built out a team and a support structure around it. So yeah, it depends. If you're going to work for a company that has that infrastructure set for you, you have a higher chance of being successful than going into one where you're expected to define the thing that you don't really know about.
And it's definitely easier to do now than it was when we started. I was a complete accidental product manager, as I said. I just asked, hey, so why are we doing this? And everything fell apart from there. Adam, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just follow up on that, because I think this is far more an apprenticeship job than it is kind of anything else. I really feel bad for people jumping into companies as the first PM. Sometimes I've seen folks do this out of school, or they took a course and they're just kind of like the first PM, and they tend to, it can become abusive for that PM, right? If one of the things about product, which is a line that we all have to dance around, is this ability to say no and the confidence to say it effectively. If you don't have the background or somebody to teach you how to do that, you end up saying yes a lot, and then you end up burning yourself out. Right? There's a PM graveyard of folks that took that job and who could have been really great at this, but because they took it and because they didn't have a mentor to guide them, or somebody to even a coach or somebody to hold their hand and make sure they knew how to say no effectively, are not doing this anymore, and it's sad. So on that note, like, start after school, start when you're 40, start when you're 92. If it's good for you, just go start. But I think far more important is to find somebody, be anybody, to help you build that confidence around what you're doing and how you're doing it.
I want to just kind of chime in on the confidence part real quick. So I've been
go for it.
coaching and mentoring people quite a bit. And a lot of the time I meet people who are in companies that don't have a well-defined product management role, and they get promoted. I have one coachee, and she's got promoted to senior product manager. And she is a very curious person. So she read all of the stuff. She learned lots and lots of frameworks. Like, she did all that work on her own. And when she came to me, she said, I just got promoted, but I have no idea what I'm doing, which is also, imposter phenomenon. And what I did for her was really just kind of being her cheerleader and giving her the confidence to actually believe that she can do those things, and maybe sometimes give her pointers in one direction or another. And after a year and a half of mentoring, coaching with her, she's now a head of product, and like feels super confident and is so happy and excited about her role. And so confidence can make such a difference, and having someone to give you that is so helpful. But I also found that like the product management community is just so open. If you reach out to people and be like, hey, I have a question. This is my question. Can somebody help me? Like, there's always someone who's just like, yeah, you know what? Let's like do a virtual coffee and chat for 30 minutes. Well, I'll talk you through it.
Absolutely. That's how I've met most of my product management. That's how we met. You just reached out and you're like, hey, what's up? So that was amazing. We have some really awesome questions in the chat. I'm going to pick two, and then we'll go back to one of our other questions. And then I cannot believe that we already have to wrap this up. That's amazing. What approach would you give, or recommendations would you give someone that's trying to transition from project management to product management? Adam H.
I think experienced project managers have two of what I consider to be like key pillars of the actual job of product management, not necessarily the theory, right? You can execute, right? And more importantly, you can help others execute. And you can do so in a way that is focused on delivery. The project managers that I've seen be successful come over to product, right, tend to work or have to work more on the ambiguities of product management, the vision, the strategy, and all those fun buzzwords that we talk about all the time, because it's seeing how your project fits into the larger scheme of outcomes, and then planning for things that are not yet defined. And I personally think that project management is it's one of my least favorite parts of the job, but executing is not. So, maybe I'm a little strange there, but it becomes, being more comfortable with ambiguity and being more comfortable with the big picture of things outside of the scope of the project itself is something to think about, right? I don't truly have an answer to like a framework or anything like that might help, but I would suggest just understanding how a given project fits into the overall outcomes that the business itself is going for, and maybe talk to some of the folks that are less involved in the execution of the project and more involved with the planning of it, would be somewhere to start.
Excellent. Mr. Thomas.
Yes. So the biggest difference, I think, between project management and product management is just really how and why, right? So you're an expert at driving results. You're an expert at of making things happen, right? You're a great how person. You just have to shift over to the why. And so, as Adam H mentioned, asking questions to business stakeholders, asking why, a bit more than you do, will give you a step. And then also really lean on your strengths, right? Like, I'm a project manager. I'm really good at executing. There's you might end up in a place that's not really good at product management, but we don't have enough time to really get into why that is. So buyer beware. But leaning on your strengths of with if you're PMP certified, or if you're just a really good project manager that knows how to get things out the door, and a delivery expert, right? Lean on that and find some time with a product manager and just start asking questions, right? About problem discovery, ideation and validation, right? That's probably going to be where your weak spot is. Spend some time over there, and you'll get there.
Lisa, what about you?
Yeah, not much to add anymore. But I was going to say, like, if you have the chance, if you want to transition within a company, or there's product management in the company that you work at, like, start trying to work closer with them. Maybe you can even do a smaller project where you take over some responsibilities from the product manager on it, if there's a possibility to do something like that, to kind of start getting some hands-on experience. Because there's always the one thing where you like learn about it and you ask a lot of questions. That's important, but also sometimes doing can really like teach you a lot. So if you have the chance on shadowing and then actually taking over some of the smaller responsibilities, maybe that's a cool starting point.
Yeah, I will agree with the asking why. CTOT says I should ask why more than 100 times a day, and I'm living up to that standard around here. For everyone in the airfocus team watching, it's true. I want to, before we get to the last question, ask something that's, I think, a bit more personal than not a lot of people talk about in general, which is, how do we deal with all that stress? Because we've just told everyone not to go into PM because we have a love-hate relationship with it, which is true. It's a very, very stressful role. But how do we deal with that stress? Do you have any hobbies or things that you do as a routine to help with that? I don't know who wants to chime in first on this, because I know everybody has different things that they do.
I'll jump in before my mic cuts out again. A couple things as an individual contributor, or just as a person, what I like to do. One thing I'd recommend people to do. I know I might not be the audio guy to trust based on this being your only experience with me. However, I would recommend getting a really, really nice noise canceling headset, and taking as many meetings as you can as walks. that will help bring down, like that'll get you up, it'll get you moving, and it'll get you some fresh air on a daily basis, right? As a PM, you can find yourself sitting in front of the camera for 10 hours straight, and so having just a break where you walk around, even if you're walking and talking, you can even get as good as presenting if you're really slick, is big, right? And then finding ways and talking with your team about this, right? I think one of the things that escapes or an opportunities that we miss is leaning on our team, right? Because your team's going to be burnt out if you're burnt out, and so bringing that conversation in the open can do wonders. As a leader, one thing that I've started doing is talking about closing the store. Right, this idea of your store is open, right? And when the store is open, you're shipping, you're doing all the things that open stores do, but stores also have to close on a daily basis, right? To recover, to clean, to do inventory and things like that, right? As a PM and as an extension of your team, it's important to have these store closing moments, because if you keep the lights on too long, if you keep a bulb on all the time, it's going to burn out, right? And so it's important to, and so I'm really trying to encourage the PMs that report to me to really start thinking about closing the store and treating it as serious as you keep the store open, because ultimately, if you do both well, you'll feel better and you'll probably turn out better work.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not sure if this is exactly what you were saying with the idea of closing the store, but I am a huge proponent of knowing how and when you work best and logging off, which in an increasingly remote world is more and more difficult, but you need to be able to log off. It is very tightly coupled with the idea of being able to say no as a product manager. And I think even if you have no hobbies, logging off will do more than enough, I think, to recharge you and get you ready for what needs to happen. Personally, I'm very, there is a very set time of the day where I pick up my kids from daycare. I come home and I play with them. I'm fortunate to work for a company that kind of encourages that. Some of the folks on our engineering teams as well, we have these things blocked off on our calendars for a reason. Do not schedule a meeting at this point because this is what I am doing to recharge right now. And, I still play music. I'm a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons. I, have a group that plays a couple times a week. But none of that would matter if
Can we join?
Yes. I will always run a one shot for folks that are interested. But yeah, none of the hobbies, none of the relaxation matters if you always have that phone in your pocket or that laptop open and you see the Slack message pop up, because as PMs, we're probably going to check if we notice that it's happening. So log off is my advice. I'm
with you on that one. I work 7 to 4, and then after 4 o'clock, I don't answer message. It's 8 to 5 in Germany. I'm an hour behind, so it works really well for me. And I make sure I get my exercise in the morning. I walk my dog in the afternoon, who's already, she's like, it's almost 4 o'clock, let's go. And I will shut off my phone. And that's it. No more Slack. If it's an emergency, if it's truly an emergency and everything's on fire, yes, you can message me on WhatsApp and I will deal with it. But my WhatsApp never rings, because we all have those really well set boundaries. If you also, I'm also a proponent of just having things that make you happy. I like to cook. Since I work from home, it's like my favorite thing to do. I like to paint. And again, since I work from home, I have more time to do it. It's very, very relaxing. But Lisa, I'd love to know what you do.
Yeah, for the logging off part, I think one of the things that we kind of forget, because it's always logging off in the evening, taking a proper lunch break. Like in the middle of the day, I always take an hour and I will be like, I'll put my Slack on, I'm out for lunch, and people know they can't reach me for that hour. And I will not look at my phone or my computer or anything. I also like to cook when I have my lunch hour, because if you have a whole hour, you can actually make some nice food and stuff. And maybe sit on the couch and, I don't know, hang out with my cat. That's what I do. So that's something that really helps me. And also just to be in the afternoon, I'll be like, okay, I would do a coffee break now. So I'll go and make a fancy coffee, which just takes me a bit of time. because when you're at home, you don't have this whole thing of like, oh, you like check in with your colleagues and then you go to the kitchen and you get the coffee and then everybody goes back to the desks at some point. So just kind of creating these same moments. And then after work, I love anything that is great escapism in games, like video games, board games, Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm also definitely in. And those kinds of things. And because all of those are very much sit on your butt hobbies, I also do yoga, which I have found helps my back so much because I can't get around sitting in front of a camera all the time, but you can at least stretch. And I sometimes do that during the day too. Because when you're concentrating on not falling over because you're doing like a weird thing with your arms and your legs and everything, it really takes your mind off of other things.
Exercise, walk and talk, and disconnect. Those are the top 3 things that I think we've taken away from this. Excellent. It's time for our last question. And it's an interesting one. I don't know if you guys can hear the seagulls, by the way. I live right by the sea and I can hear them very loudly. How do you think product management will look like? Or what do you think? Let me reread that. What do you think product management will look like by the end of 2022? What changes or challenges do you see coming in the next year? I don't know who wants to go first. Who should I pick on?
I can take this one first.
Adam seems like he wants to start.
Yeah, I think we're going to see, and maybe my lens is very focused on the U.S. right now, but I think we're going to start to see a reckoning of PMs wanting to question whether the work that they do is, at the end of the day, beneficial or detrimental to, and this is a big one, society at large, right? Personally, I used to work for a short time in ad tech, right? And I got very disillusioned with some of the things that I was building because of what they were used for, right? And I think in 2022, as the world itself starts to grapple with things like, well, social media, is it healthy? I think a lot of PMs are going to start to question, well, what have I contributed to some of the problems that have been caused by the products that I've built? And likewise, right, PM should also say, well, what good have I brought about based on what I've done? And I think you're going to, or I hope you're going to see a rush of PMs moving to things that are of benefit to folks, and whether that means starting their own companies or joining companies that already do this. That's kind of what I think we're gonna see. We're gonna see a reckoning of PMs being forced to confront what it is that they're building and whether or not it is of use.
Lisa, I'll pick on you next.
Oh, no, I'll mute myself now that we all also have done that one, because that's also a classic. It's like, wait, I'm still on mute. So I think we're probably still going to have a lot more of that going on next year as well. I think like one of the things that often happens is that we're like a bit behind in like what's happening in the US to what's happening in Europe product wise. So we can often kind of just look over there and be like, so that might be coming next. Interesting. I think what I have seen and hope to see more of are things like, which is kind of exactly what Adam already said, is this purpose in your work. And also I have heard more and more people talk about diversity and inclusion and equity within product, and like putting ethical into the equation of your product management risk assessments. I think that's really great. I think Ken Norton and Teresa Torres have talked about these kinds of things. And I did too. I'm not as fancy and famous as they are, but I think it's
she's great. You should follow her.
And I think it's really cool to see more of it. And I think that's a trend that keeps on going. I have one thing. Well, I don't want this to sound wrong, but I really hope that the CPTO role goes extinct again. I've seen that like quite a bit lately, where people are like, oh yeah, like they're responsible for product and tech and on different levels, but even on the highest level. And I'm like, But isn't the whole idea that you have product and tech, and then they kind of have this tension that makes everything better because they need to have that tension? So yeah, I don't want the individuals to go extinct that are in those rules, but I think the rule could just go away forever. So that's more of a hope than I think, but you know.
That's hilarious. I will refrain from having any further thoughts on that for now. We'll talk about it later. Adam Thomas, what would you like to add?
I agree with Adam. There's a reckoning for Web 2.0 coming. I don't know when, how, where, and why, especially with Web 3.0 getting its start, and hopefully we can understand the mistakes of the past and not repeat them. I don't know. We'll have to, fingers crossed. Very much fingers crossed. I think we still have a raging pandemic happening, and I think we've been going on these 19 months or so, 20 months, and I saw this when I joined my last company. For the first half of the pandemic, I was speaking, teaching, consulting, and kind of ran my own schedule, right? And then I joined a company. People were burnt out. People were very tired. And we're starting to see people change companies. But I haven't seen a lot of shift from, our HR components or friends around this. And the reality that this pandemic has a lot of second and tertiary order effects that will affect product people and how we work. And so I think the thing I see over the next year is, unless there are some serious changes around things like how we deal with sick leave or how we deal with burnout, things are going to get worse before they get better. And unfortunately, I really hope, this is something that I really want to start harping on over the next year, creating space for a different type of work, because whether we want to or not, we're here. And I think the best of us will prepare and help those around us prepare for it. Yeah.
I love what you said, and my thoughts on that was going to be, I think more and more people, even outside of product, are becoming more aware about how important our mental health is. And with this pandemic, just making sure that that support system is in place in product for, psychological safety, but also on mental health, as with the question that we answered earlier, how do we take care of ourselves and deal with that stress? That's super, super important. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? Everybody went quiet at the same time. I love it.
You should probably be doing more research and asking why. I have to add some CTOD here, just because I feel like that's what he would say.
Yes, that is what CTOD would say. Raise your hand if CTOD is your mentor. Yeah. CTOD would say ask more why, but just ask more questions in general. Do not be afraid of asking questions. Ask all the questions. Don't be afraid of sounding dumb. There's no such thing as being dumb. And I always say this to my team, there's no such thing as a dumb question. If you didn't understand something, we can find different ways of explaining it. Some people are visual, and that's another thing that's really important. Neurodiversity. People, not everybody learns the same way. I have a background in support. Some people like to read, some people are visual, some people like videos, some people like to chat, and you have to adapt for the ways that different people learn. And product managers are no different. We all learn in a variety of different ways. And so we should be making space for how we carry on conversations within product, but also outside of product. So yes, be curious. Absolutely. I think our time is now up. So thank you everyone so much for joining. Amazing audience, amazing speakers. We had so many questions that I'm actually sorry we didn't get to answer, but hopefully we can do this again to answer at least one of these questions. Yes, this was recorded. and you will be able to watch it back. The team will be sending the URL shortly. Thank you to all of our speakers again for joining us. Thanks to the audience once again for sticking with us for a whole hour. Amazing. Thank you so much, and see you soon. Have happy holidays. Bye, everyone.
Hey, everyone. Bye-bye.